Well, greetings and welcome to the Dividing Line. It's been about 48 weird hours. Actually, once the last program was done, I didn't really see much commentary until the next morning, and maybe it's because I don't follow some of the people I need to follow to be able to see all this stuff, but. After that, things started getting really weird. Someone sent me a link to a post on X where someone was saying, "Hey, listen to what is said here at about the 30-minute mark." And once you find those, you start looking around. That's when you start discovering things. And I knew when I chose to comment on Doug Wilson's comments on the issue of a particular meme. He had brought it up, I don't know, about 10 days ago or so. And I had been contacted about it before then. I think I knew about it before Doug did. And that this was being passed around within the Reformed community as if it was humorous. And it was that meme. I've seen it in many. Some people have reposted it since then, where the little girl is asking her mom, they're baking something, and it's this little conversation. And I've seen this meme used for dozens of different things and lots of funny things. But this one said, "Mommy, what's the Holocaust?" And Mommy responds, "It's when the Jews had to do manual labor and they said it was killing them." And, I've followed the Auschwitz memorial people. They will post pictures of people who died at Auschwitz when they've got the date when they were brought in and when they died, or if they survived. Very rare for that. And of course, for years and years and years, I was in high school when I first read The Hiding Place, which is a story of the Ten Booms, and especially Corey and Betsy, and their experience at the Ravensbrück concentration camp, and how Betsy had died there, and Corey was released by mistake. She was only like a week away from when women her age were executed. And then when I used to travel over to Germany and teach over there, which I really enjoyed. I miss that. I really do. I got to visit various places. I got to visit the Stasi prison, which was the East German prison in East Berlin. And what a depressing place that was. But I also got to visit Sachsenhausen. I mentioned this last time. And visit the gas chambers and the medical, quote unquote, medical experimentation areas. And I mentioned that when the Soviets came in, they took it over and expanded it, actually. But I mentioned last time, over the gate, they all said the same thing: Arbeit macht frei. And Sachsenhausen has the same thing. It was a surreal experience to walk through that gate and to walk around those grounds. It really was. So I commented on the last program, partly to just warn my fellow elders. This is not the type of thing that should be being laughed at amongst Reformed people. No matter what your perspectives are. Now, when the attack on Israel took place last year, the phrase anti-Semitism began to be discussed by a lot of people. And anyone who, my first master's degree is from Fuller Theological Seminary. And so I have said many times on this program that New Testament theology, Christian theology as a whole, but especially New Testament theology, has been deeply impacted by the state of affairs in Europe after World War II. And so you all may remember when the movie came out with Mel Gibson, the Passion movie, and how there was a lot of pushback for the portrayal of Jews, their role in the crucifixion, and how at one point, especially, and when I saw the movie, I definitely caught this, and at one point in the film, remember, they used subtitles and actually used Aramaic for what was being said. And they had the quotation from Matthew. When Pilate says, my hands, I wash my hands, I'm innocent of the blood of this man. And the Jews say, his blood be upon us and upon our children, which is found in the Gospel of Matthew. And in fact is directly related to what Peter says in Acts 2. When, the Jews are like, what shall we do? They figure, we've killed the Messiah. We're toast. And he specifically says the promise, and this is where my Presbyterian brothers don't quote it correctly, the promise is to you and to your children and to as many as are afar off, as many as the Lord our God shall call to himself. So Peter says to the Jews, actually, you're not cast off if you'll believe in the Messiah. The promise, the Holy Spirit, forgiveness of sins, is for you and your children, Jewish people, and for as many as are far off, the Gentiles, as many as the Lord our God shall call to himself. Jews and Gentiles together, one church, Acts chapter 2. This is directly related to what is said by the Jews in Matthew, because the Jews who hear this message when Peter preaches are like, his blood is upon us. We can't, we're doomed. So there was such an outcry against the movie before it came out, people who previewed it, that they removed the subtitles, but they kept the words in Aramaic. And if you know enough Hebrew, you can follow the Aramaic and you can still hear them say it. But they took it out. There was so much pressure placed upon them. And, I talked about that as a Reformed theologian. You spend a fair amount of time in Acts chapter 4 and the early church's prayer. And the early church recognized that God in his sovereignty had used Herod, crazy man, Pontius Pilate, had the chief authority of the Romans in Jerusalem at that time, but a pure political animal and a coward. The Jews and their jealousy of Jesus, and the Gentile people, the Roman soldiers, to do whatever your hand and your will predestined to occur. That's the early church's teaching. That's you'd have to sit there and say, well, the early church, they didn't know yet, blah, 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 blah. No, that was what was the early church taught, and that's what the Bible teaches. And I've talked about the fact that it's very unpopular in New Testament circles to to say things like this. You're not allowed to let the New Testament speak for itself, because that's anti-Semitic, or that's anti-Jewish. And so for decades, I've said, call it what you want. It's what the Bible teaches, and it's what we need to teach. You don't edit the Bible based upon what happened 2,000 years later. It's like, well, that could cause a problem. And of course, you all can go to YouTube, and you can find the sermon that I get. Well, sermon, talk, lecture. I don't know. It's not really a sermon. It's a lecture that I gave on October 31st, 2017. So the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. I talked about the two Luthers and the dangers of sacralism. And I talked about how Luther, up to 1525, had put himself in danger, literally, by how he referred to the Jews and how he wanted to see the Jews converted. And he said Jesus was a Jew. Can you believe that that was actually a controversial statement in that day? It was. And then the Peasants' Revolt takes place. Other things take place in his life. And toward the end of his life, the Jews and their lies, he writes. And he has completely gone about, reversed course. And he's saying the same things that the popes have been saying for a long time, who are deeply anti-Jewish. And amazingly, the same things that his arch rival were saying. Eck, his arch rival, he was the first person to oppose Luther. And Eck wrote the worst book in the history of the Western Church against the Jews. It was putrid. It was horrible. Luther's wasn't as bad, but it certainly wasn't any good. And of course, Luther is the one that gets attacked because the Nazis quoted from Luther and stuff like that. And they could have quoted from the Pope. They could have quoted from Eck, but they quote from Luther, at least in northern Germany. Southern Germany would be much more Roman Catholic. So I talk about this in the talk that I gave on Reformation Day in 2017. And so we've been very consistent over the years. When this definition of anti-Semitism was suggested, that was put into law, that said that part of anti-Semitism is saying the Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus. I'm like, oh, well, for the Bible, it says they were. There's no way around it. You can't change what was written long before this nation even came into existence. So I'm not any longer, and haven't been for many, many decades, a dispensational premillennialist. I certainly was raised with that. And so it did take a while to, I've told the story about in 1984? No, even before that. No, 1980. Telling my friends at our Baptist church about the budding the fig tree. It took place in 1948, a generation's 40 years, so we've only got till 1988. And I seriously prayed, Lord, I'd really like to get married before the rapture happens. So, Then you had the 88. Was it 88 reasons it was 1988, or was it 84? I forget. Edgar Whisenant. No, not Whisenant. Sorry, Chris. Edgar, whatever his name was. We walked out of church one day, and this booklet was on all the cars. And this was a large church. There was a lot of... Somebody had to really put a lot of work into that. I'm surprised we didn't have security back then. Anyway, so all that stuff, where Israel today, Michael Brown thinks Israel today is a fulfillment of prophecy. I don't. It's a secular nation. I said on the last program, they promote the LGBTQ stuff. I've been to Tel Aviv. I've seen it there. I don't think that the nation of Israel is a prophetic fulfillment, anything like that at all. And so I don't believe that they are perfect in what they do. Netanyahu was in deep doo-doo a year ago right now with the Supreme Court stuff, and looked like not going to lose an election, but maybe be removed from office. And hey, politics. They locked down like nobody's business during COVID, all this kind of stuff. So not a dispensational, hey, everything Israel does is great type person. But what does any of that have to do with mocking the murder of Jewish people by the Nazi regime? I did not know until the past 40 hours or so that there are people, and I have been blocking right, left, and center on Twitter. I've been removing followers. It says follows you, remove, block, remove, block, remove, block. I did not know the vile stuff that's out there. Just vile. Hitler defenders. Hitler was misunderstood by history, and Hitler wanted to just get rid of all the sexual perverts in Europe, and Hitler was this, and Hitler. And I'm sitting here going, what are you people talking about? What is going on here? And you're following me? Anymore, you're not. What is? And at first, yesterday, this is just telling the truth. Over half the people that I was blocking for their, I just can't believe that you would say that's not funny, or I just can't believe that you would think that churches should be warned about this. Churches should be warned about this. And I've already been warning institutions and churches about this kind of stuff. Over half the people that I was removing as followers and blocking had in their bio, not everybody has it. I've filled mine out as much as it can be filled out. I've had to be very, I grandfather and this, that, and the other thing. Not everybody has it, but a lot of people will put that bio, a little description of who they are, what they do, stuff like that. Over half of them had 1689 in their bio. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's the London Baptist Confession of Faith. 1689, actually. 1689 didn't have anything to do with it, but that's another long story. I was stunned. When I started seeing this stuff, I was talking to a couple of Reformed Baptist scholars, professors, colleagues of mine. And I'm, my heart's broken. I just, the utter lack of discernment. And many of these are younger guys. I was looking at some guy just, talking about how I'm stuck in a boomer worldview. A boomer worldview? I'm sorry, but if you know anything about worldview, if you really know anything about worldview, then there is no such thing as a boomer worldview. Or at least you'd have to recognize that someone who is engaged in the work that I have for as long as I have, my worldview is the subject of a tremendous amount of study. I've taken my worldview outside of Twitter and Facebook, outside of social media, and have actually exposed it to all sorts of other worldviews and things like that, which almost none of these people have themselves, by the way. So I'm just like, so much of this stuff I don't even know how to respond to. But there's this one guy I just oh, great. Wonder where I put my, Oh, brother, you see those reading glasses next to you? We have a studio audience today, and you're going to see an arm here. Thank you. Reading glasses are very, very helpful. Um, but there's a guy, I've already banned him, called Outer Spection, Outer Spection 1. And I don't know who posted the specific thing, but it is a screenshot from the last program with the background and stuff like that of me on one side. And on the other side, I think, is Stephen Wolf. I think. And it's, which way, Reformed man? Which way, Reformed man? And down below it, this Outer Spection guy has, James White had his time. At this point, he had been a nuisance, frozen in a boomer worldview. There it is, boomer worldview. I'm not even sure what that exactly means, and I sort of doubt that Outer Spection would be able to give a overly comprehensive definition of that. Especially if I were to be standing in front of them. So many of these folks are so brave behind a keyboard. And then they just start stuttering when you actually face them yourself. I don't stutter in those situations. I've been around this block a few times. I even had a guy, and this was, it says, genuine question of James White, and I truly hope he answers, which I did an hour ago. I'm going to read what he said. What's the difference between me laughing at a Holocaust joke, that's what that meme was, and coping about my dead wife through humor? Should I repent of both? People cope with the absurd through humor. And I'm like, so this was my response. This is exactly what I wrote. It is difficult for me to believe that you're being serious. It truly is. I struggle to believe anyone could be so vacuous as to make a comment like this. If your wife had been murdered by vicious, evil men who had been indoctrinated into a cult of death and who had murdered thousands of others heartlessly while laughing about it, and you laughed at a joke mocking your wife for her misfortune, then you might have somewhat of a parallel. Otherwise, you clearly lack basic categorical thought skills because you're comparing things that cannot logically, rationally, morally, ethically be parallel. But I just can't believe anybody would say something like that. It's just beyond my capacity to even understand that someone would say something like that. And the weird thing is, it's not his at thing, but before the at thing it says a Jew. What? I don't even know. I don't even know. So I just now found his response to what I just read to you. This is prideful and unbrotherly. I just noticed your answer, by the way. I'm being sincere, and you dismiss sincerity because the humor offends your sensibilities. One of us is actually sinning right now. Hint, it isn't me. Notice, he does not interact with anything I said. It's not even, so far, I have not found any of these folks that actually are willing to do so. Categorical thinking is not something that they're up on. It really isn't. Truly amazing. Truly amazing. So, what I'm discovering, one other guy, I'm not sure if I can find it in here, but I said to a guy, good, Post Mill in Practice. Someone named Post Mill in Practice. He is attacking us who follow those who came before him, led to them by him. I'm not sure what that means. I hate that I'm forced into this situation. I loved, past tense, James White. I loved, past tense, Wilson. But they are shooting us in the back as we continue on the very path that they laid out for us in pursuit of truth. My response was, we never capitalized, all caps. We never laid out this path for you. Never, not once. Don't try to blame, don't try to lay the blame for your bigotry and imbalance on the ones you now condemn. But I am just going, what? Why are there so many 1689ers doing this stuff? And when you push them on it, they're like, well, but you're going to be accused of being an anti-Semite if you just say what the Bible says about the Jews. I've been there, done that long before you came along. That's not what I'm talking about. If you can't see how a meme mocking Jews in the Holocaust is not only not funny, it's untruthful. Think of all the things that Paul says that we are to think of. True, honest, just, pure, lovely. That ain't none of those things. You hear me? That ain't none of those things. So I'm sitting here. This is basic Christianity 101. I mean, this would literally be like you sitting there, and I'm sure that I could probably pull one up very quickly if you just can find a few Planned Parenthood people to follow on social media. This would be like mocking babies who are torn apart in the womb and thinking it's funny. Same thing. Same thing. There were so many Christians who gave their lives to try to rescue Jews from the Nazi Holocaust. And if you laugh at that meme, you are mocking them. You're mocking the Ten Booms. You're mocking all the people in that family that died to rescue people. You're mocking them. And if you can't see that, what spirit of deception has taken you over? I don't get it. There's nothing in the 1689. There's nothing in the Westminster Confession. And here's where people are going. Here's where people are going. They're saying, see, this is all about eschatology. If you were a dispensational premillennialist, this wouldn't be happening. Well, this is the argument's this. If you don't believe that the modern nation of Israel is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, if you don't believe that the majority of Old Testament prophecies about land and God's blessings, stuff like that, are actually about Israel and not about the church, even though New Testament writers apply them to the church. But anyways, if you would just do what we do, none of this would exist. Okay. So when did we start doing biblical interpretation based upon what might happen if we apply sound hermeneutical principles to Scripture? I am reminded of the debate I did with Dr. Sabin in 1999. He was one of the leading oneness guys. You may have seen, I think, Walter Martin. I think Walter Martin debated him in like the 80s, if I recall correctly. Anyway, one of his arguments in our debate was you can't believe in the doctrine of the Trinity because Trinitarians burned Unitarians. And it's like, well, yes, self-professed Trinitarians did burn Unitarians. That did happen in church history. Now, as I pointed out in Louisville a few months ago, I was doing a quick church history run at Brian Gunter's church, and I made the comment, I said, Baptists have been killed by everybody. Roman Catholics, Reformed, Anglicans, everybody has killed Baptists. Um, Baptists have been killed by everybody. We haven't killed anybody. Baptists don't have a foundation for uh, imprisoning, persecuting, drowning, burning, whatever, other people on the foundation of theological differences. And so the pastor's wife immediately had a T-shirt made for me, which they gave to me, with that quote on it: "Baptists, we get killed by everybody, but we don't kill anybody." So I haven't worn it on the dividing line. I should do that just for the fun of it now that I've mentioned it. But the argument does not impact how you interpret the passage of Scripture that clearly teach the doctrine of the Trinity. So if someone who believes something that's true does something bad, that doesn't change the truth of what they believe. So, you know, I can see people who will profess, well, I think the London Baptist Confession of Faith is a great summary of Christian doctrine. And I also think that Hitler was actually a really cool dude. Okay, the one actually doesn't impact the other, but it does make anyone sit back and go, have our churches been assuming things they shouldn't be assuming? Are we not addressing foundational things that, I mean, most of these people seem rather young. My parents lived through World War II. My uncle fought in the Pacific. Of course, I've been a reader of the history of World War II for a very, very long time. And so maybe we're getting far enough away now. I mean, you know, we just had the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and I just thought it was so cool. There was an actual paratrooper from D-Day that parachuted into Normandy. Now, of course, he was with some other guy that was, you know, but he was like 96 or something like that. If every bone in my body would break if I did something like that. I don't know how he stood up after that landing. But anyways, that's getting to be a long time ago. And maybe there's just more and more people that that's just ancient history. Don't even need to worry about it anymore. Don't need to think about it anymore. I know none of these people have toured Sachsenhausen. That's the only one I've been to. I've driven past Buchenwald. And by the way, I used Buchenwald as my example when I spoke to the Phoenix City Council a number of years ago. It's on YouTube. He only had 3 minutes. I made it in my 3 minutes. But I used Buchenwald as my example. And how Patton had forced the inhabitants of the nearby town to tour Buchenwald. Many of them threw up and couldn't make it and passed out and everything else, and he forced them to do it. You sat here and you watched these smokestacks, and you did nothing. So I don't think most of these people have been to any of those places, and I don't get the feeling they would care to go to those places either, I guess. But yes, it does leave me sitting here going, what's going on? I've never blocked this many people. I think once I made that comment on my anniversary in like 2020. And I think over the next 2 or 3 days, I may have blocked as many people as I've blocked now. But the vast majority of them were way on the left. They weren't supposedly my fellow Reformed believers. And so someone might use this as an argument against Reformed theology. Okay. If you want to make a connection between a belief in the sovereignty of God or something like that, and allowing people to do this kind of thing, go for it. I'd like to hear what it is. But I don't think that that's valid argumentation. But it does make me go, what are we missing? What are we missing that would allow the next generations to be so easily deceived by literally Nazi propaganda? Oh, and I know I've seen a bunch of these things. I've seen this stuff, and it's like, yeah, well, if you say the Jews crucified Jesus, you're gonna be called an anti-Semite. I've said that forever, and I'm not gonna stop saying that because the Bible says that. So I don't care about that. And yeah, but I can defend it. That doesn't mean that for a second I am going to be subject to Nazi propaganda. I had another guy just really, really angry at me because I've told the story. I'm not going to tell the whole story again, but because of how I handled the guy who came to Apologia with a message for us. You should have been really nice to the guy. Folks, I went to for 29 and a half years, I was a member of the Phoenix Reformed Baptist Church. Don Fry was the pastor when we joined there in 1989, and I became an elder there for decades. And every time one of these people showed up, Don Fry's attitude basically was, oh, you're here to tell the elders what to do? Okay, please don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, just no patience with that at all. God did not make you an elder in this church. That's not how it works. If you want to walk into a church thinking you're a prophet, and you know what? 99.99% of these people are not in a church. They're not serving Christ people because they can't get along with anybody, because they think they're the only ones who have the insight to this stuff. And those of you who are upset about that, you've obviously not been pastoring very long if you're a pastor. Okay, just someday you're going to be greeting people after the service. You've already had to deal with 2 or 3 crises that day. Somebody in the church is not happy with you. You know you're going to be meeting with a couple that's in trouble in their marriage, 2 days from now. And some person you've never met before in your life with a little bit of a wild look in their eye is going to come up to you, and they're going to communicate to you that you need to sit down and learn from them right now. And you know what? You're going to remember that you came after me for doing what you're going to do when that happens. Because you're going to realize, no. Sorry, that's, if you're a part of this church and you're a serious student and you've got serious questions or you've come up with serious issues, that's completely different. If you're someone that I don't know from Adam that's just going from church to church to church to try to get disciples, ain't happening. And I ain't going to feel bad about it. So, again, it was this guy saying, we appreciate everything you do with the Mormons and on abortion, but you just need to understand who's behind all of this, who starts all the cults. I've seen a bunch of this. Who does all the pornography? Who does all the abortion? It's the Jew. Or some of them said, well, no, we need to be more accurate. It's not the Jews, it's Zionism. What? So, some people say, well, you shouldn't block folks. I don't want these kinds of people in my comment threads because they'll start off sounding like they're reformed like we are. But in reality, they've got another agenda behind them. And I ain't going to do it. And if you don't like that, then don't follow me on Twitter. That's perfectly fine too. But let me tell you something. I now know what's out there. And I don't think I even know the depth of it yet. But I know what's out there. And my ears and eyes are now open. I've already communicated this stuff to the elders at my church. And we are going to keep a close eye out for it. This is not going to happen in our fellowship. And we have to be careful who we associate with outside. Because, I love the fact that Apologia wants to work with everybody. We want to get along. When we do ReformCon, we bring people in from all sorts of different perspectives. And we don't demand that we agree on absolutely everything. We've got Presbyterians in there all the time. And we want to work together. We work with Doug Wilson. We work with Toby Sumpter. We work with Chocolate Knox, even though I scare him to death. And Gabe Wrench, Gabe watched me on my very first RV trip trying to hook that thing up for like 20 minutes. And now I do it first shot like that. Honestly, Gabe. And Gabe came to Apologia to do a debate with one of our deacons on the issue of paedobaptism. And Southwest lost his luggage. And he had to do the debate in jeans and a t-shirt, which I think for Gabe is probably his best look anyways. I just think that's probably best. But anyway, we get along with people. We want to get along with people. But there are certain things you just simply cannot allow to enter into the fellowship. Because if people lack the discernment to be able to recognize the evil of Nazi propaganda, then they are going to be subject to bring things into the fellowship that will cause division, that will cause strife, that will cause church splits, that will cause they will be looking to take disciples off after themselves. And that's what people have been, I can't believe you're adding to the gospel. Adding to the gospel? If you can't see how the gospel should cause you to not find funny the murder of innocent people, then I don't think you know the gospel. You may know all the verses and everything else, but I don't think you even know it. You're in trouble, deep trouble. And I say to my fellow pastors, my fellow elders in Reformed churches, keep an eye on. This stuff is out there. And half these people, I had no idea. Because the only times they would comment on stuff was on stuff we were all in agreement on. And then all of a sudden it comes out. And this is how you sow division. This is how you destroy things. And this is what's happening. So I don't even know what to say about things. People were wanting me to get into all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, okay. Tomorrow evening, I'm debating Tim Barber here in the Denver area. You gonna be able to make the debate? Good. It's nice having a live studio audience, even though I wasn't sure if he was still conscious. We're doing dinner after this, so I'm debating Tim Barber on open theism tomorrow evening. Now, you may not care about open theism. Okay. I think it's a very important issue. I think it's God-honoring to defend his sovereignty and his eternality. I think open theism is a blatant making God in our image. And so we're doing a debate tomorrow night. And I'm hoping that it's going to be as friendly and uncompromising as the debate we did last week, which I think is over 60,000 views in less than a week. I'm very pleased about that, especially given all the things I said about Pope Francis in that particular debate. So I'm not sure why it's so wildly popular, but I think it's great. So 2 debates. Next Wednesday, debating Jared Longshore from Moscow, Idaho, New St. Andrews, Nature of the New Covenant, who's in the New Covenant. I listened to everything that I said on the dividing line to Jared back in December on a very long, my rides are getting longer and longer because I'm going slower and slower, bike ride up here in Colorado. Just the day I have to stop doing this, you're going to see a real change in me. You really will. This is just been so much a part of my life for so long now. The beauty, um, the beauty up here is just astonishing. It really, really is. Anyway, I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just sort of saying to folks, no, I'm not going to drop all this. I'm not going to be unprepared for debates. I'm not going to invest my life in that which is so depressing and so sad. Um, but that's what you have to do because they have all these secret sources of information out there. You just got to get out of your boomer worldview. Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. Denver, I don't know what on earth is causing this to infiltrate Reformed churches, but I can guarantee you one thing: the enemy is targeting us. They really are. There's no two ways about it. Looks like I do have some tweets that are going to be very, very interesting. I have now twice seen undoubtedly an AI created image. Of course, it just disappeared. It was there a second ago. It's the one thing about Twitter. It's just like, yeah. You all saw the horrific images of a Italian female boxer quitting 45 minutes into a bout with a transgender woman, also known as a perverted man. And then her dropping to her knees in tears. And it wasn't because she was so badly hurt. It was because she had worked so hard for this. Now, let me say, before someone throws a bomb my direction, I'm not really into women boxing. Okay, I'm not really into women pugilists beating each other up. I don't see that really fits with how God made women and how they are to function. There's, I think track and field, totally different thing. I mean, some of those women, they are so fast and they work so hard. Okay. But then again, they have things stolen from them by these cowardly men pretending to be women. But actually, this is a good illustration. Because let me tell you about a meme that's popped up, and some of you say, you don't think we should laugh at anything. No, if you can't understand why the mockery of the murder of millions of people based upon hatred is not worthy of laughing, then I don't know how to talk to you. We live on different planets. I don't get it. But what is funny is the meme that I've seen that I can't find anymore, but it will undoubtedly pop up probably right after I'm done with the program. Someone took Mike Tyson and put him in female clothes and long hair and said, we have a suggestion to the international boxing community. And I'm like, even at his age now, that man continues to frighten me. He really, really does. And yeah, why not? Why not? If Mike Tyson identified as a female, what are they supposed to do? They can't stop him. And how old is he now? Is he in his 60s? I think he might be in his 60s. I'm not sure. He would destroy everyone with one punch. He would be world champion. He'd have every belt from no stopping him. And everybody knows it. And everybody also realizes how grossly stupid that is. So why is there this XY chromosome dude from, what is it, Algeria? Beating up women in the Olympics. It's wrong. It's perverted. It's disgusting. And it makes all of us sit back and go, how did we get here? And all of it comes back to a complete rejection and rebellion against God's creative design. I mean, I've said, I remember I was in Flagstaff speaking at a conference that I would never be invited to speak at again. So amazing what happens in 9 years. But I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, speaking at a Reformed Baptist conference. And back then we were all friends. And that was great. When the Obergefell decision came down. And I've commented a number of times, it's like a switch was flipped. I remember I converted the decision to MP3 so I could listen to it. It was the biggest pile of childish, emotional drivel I've ever listened to. I mean, Kennedy wrote it, and he should be absolutely ashamed of himself. But then again, the Roe v. Wade decision was just as absurd on a legal level. People almost never read those things, at least not in the media anymore. So it's like a switch was flipped, and all of a sudden, all the emphasis on homosexuality became emphasis on transgenderism. Within a year, just boom, that's where everything went. And that's what's led to this. It's not insanity. It's evil. I mean, insanity can be evil. Hitler was an insane, evil man. So I guess you could do it that way. But sometimes people think of insanity as a disease or something like that, something you can treat with drugs or something. No. This is insane evil. And we see it over and over again. And part of me almost feels badly for this male boxer guy, because I think globally he's going to have to change his name, hairstyle, and everything else, because there are many, many cultures in this world that will not accept this kind of stupid behavior. And I'll be honest with you, I think he could be in danger. I really do. I think he needs to change his name, his look, and everything when he gets home, because I think he would be in real danger. But then again, every woman he's fighting is in real danger. So it sort of goes both directions. But I've been a little surprised. I'm not watching the Olympics. Like I said, if you're on social media, this stuff pops up. And I know that Remco Evenepoel won the men's time trial, and I guess the men's road race is Saturday. I'd love to watch it, but I'm not going to. But I follow so many cycling sources on Twitter, I'll find out. It's going to pop up whether I want to see it or not. But I'm a little surprised that it's only in the boxing area. Have they started weightlifting yet? I don't know. But if they allow it in boxing, are they allowing it weightlifting? Because that's the other area where, you've seen these dudes wearing a bra, lifting 150 pounds more than any woman has ever lifted in their weight class before. So I wonder if that's going to be happening in the Olympics. But I thought they banned Thomas. What was his name? Will Thomas. That's right. I know you did named him. No, I truth named him. They banned Will Thomas from competing amongst the women. So if you're not allowed to do it in swimming, why would you be allowed to do it in boxing? It's the exact same thing. Have you seen that guy's wingspan? Have you seen all of these swimmers, these male swimmers, who can just, their arms are 7 feet long. It's like they've got propellers, as he does. How is that not the same thing as a boxer that has all of that connective tissue, musculature? If you went through puberty as a male, you're stuck with it, buddy. That's the way it is. Give it up. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And same with weightlifting. And you never see it going the other direction, do you? You never see a woman entering the male weightlifting category. because they don't like being dead last and everything. And you don't see women going into the men's track and field. You don't see women going into men's tennis, because I think it was Martina Navratilova herself who said any man in the top 400 of the collegiate ranks could beat the best female tennis player. Any of them. They can serve 20 miles per hour faster. They move faster. That's just the way that it is. That's life. That's the difference between being a male and a female. God designed it that way. So we are seeing the foolishness of secular humanism, the culture of death, all around us. And wrapping things up here, it's very, very obvious to me that the Marxists, the left in the United States, feels that in 2024, they got what they want in 2020. They're going to do anything in their power to hold on to power in 2024. I don't know what's going to happen between now and November, or I guess I should say between now and January. I pray for peace. I pray for righteousness. I pray for truthfulness. But as I look at my nation, I ask myself the question, on what grounds? The only grounds I can pray for this nation is, God, in your mercy. But at the same time, the propriety for God to punish a land with blood dripping from its hands, where the people's house is clothed in LGBTQ colors, a huge extended middle finger to the sky. I don't know. I don't know. And I keep admitting, often I think about my prayers for my nation, and I feel convicted of selfishness. Either so I can continue to do the things that I'm doing, or as a grandfather, it's for my grandkids. I don't want my grandkids groveling for food as Chinese soldiers walk down the streets of their neighborhood. But when I look at the Marxists, they're not Democrats, they're Marxists. And people go, that's not fair. Listen to what Kamala Harris says. Her definition of equity is Karl Marx's definition of equity. All at the same place. Hello? I realize if you were educated in the public education system, you've never heard of this stuff before. I get it. But that's Marxism. Can you imagine what's going to happen in this world if that woman's elected president? You think you're paying a lot for food and gas now? You're not going to be able to afford any of it. Not going to be able to afford any of it. Taiwan? Oh my goodness. Who wants her to win? China, Moscow, Tehran. They all want her to win, and they are pouring the money into it. Believe you me. You want election interference? If there was anybody who actually does research and does investigation, it's happening right in front of us. Right in front of us. It is truly amazing. Well, anyways, I don't enjoy spending 40 plus minutes talking about the infiltration of utter foolishness into Reformed churches. But you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. That's what we've always done. It's not popular. I'm sure I'm losing lots of followers, both them not following anymore, fine, hustle vista, or my blocking them. And I've seen someone say, I'm not ever going to give a dime to you again. A couple times I've asked Rich, could you look up such and such a name? Because he has all those records. And not There was one time during COVID where one guy got mad at us for what I was saying about COVID, and everything I was saying has been proven true, who did give, and we took a real hit with that one. One of our biggest monthly donors. But other than that, every time I've asked, like, nope, never heard of the guy. Nope, never given a dime. Nope, never done anything. So most of this stuff is like, yeah, right. I don't think you're really being honest with me. So anyway, that's how that goes. All right. Let me see if I can remember how to do this stuff here. I think I start the music like that and say to all the rest of you, thanks for watching. Next week, probably Monday, because Wednesday is the debate. So we'll see. We'll just see which one works out best. But Lord willing, we'll see you next week. God bless.